Welcome to Learning Photography with Duck. Here's your host, Duck.
Okay.
I hit the
Okay.
wrong one. There we go. All right, we got a lively crowd tonight. Awesome. Welcome once again to another edition of Learn Photography with Duck. As always, I am your host, Duck. And welcome, Carol. I haven't seen you in a while. Nice of you to join us. Alan's here, Bob's here, Bill's here, all the regulars. We'll see if some of the other regulars come in. So anyway, I don't have any upcoming news, sadly. Although I was, earlier today, I was contacted by our good friend Greg. Everybody knows Greg. And he's looking to put some kind of little outing together now that, in preparation of, the fall colors coming out. So, yeah, we're going to look and see if we can get something where we can go out and shoot some colors. I got a funny feeling that it's going to be a very short leaf turning season. That's my guess. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. So anyway, today is Q&A, as you know, and I know Bill has a good question for me. So let me go ahead and flip this over. All right, so being Q&A, if you have a question, it doesn't matter what it's about, whether it's photography, editing, lighting, camera work, shoot it to me. Oh, almost forgot. If you are a subscriber to the Adobe products, you will have learned that they have just released the newest upgrade, which is version 25, which includes the generative AI part that was in beta testing for the past several months and has been like all over the internet. People, all the YouTubers that do Photoshop stuff have been just really going to town on them. I'm not one to download beta software on my system to play around with. So I just said I'm just going to wait until they finally release the final version because I know most of you guys are going to wait anyway also. So anyway, I've been playing around with it. Kind of interesting. There are a lot of issues with it, obviously. But it has a potential fitting into a workflow. So next month when we have our Photoshop session, I'll be going over that and give you my opinion about it and introduce you to some of the tools and all that good stuff. Now, in the meantime, if you have upgraded and you decide you're going to play around with it, just keep in mind, I don't know what the current status is. I haven't been able to get a solid answer, but it's not an unlimited use of the AI because it requires a lot of processing on Adobe's end. So the processing for the generative AI does not happen internally on your system. It is something that gets sent out to their hardware. It gets processed there and then sent back to you. So with that in mind, they're considering, putting a cap as to what you can use and or making it a pay service where you either pay an additional fee or they're just going to roll it into the fee that you're already paying. It's still to be determined. I think they're still playing around with numbers. But from what I understand, if you are a current a subscriber to like the photography package where you get Photoshop and Lightroom. I believe it's 1,000 impressions per month, and you know that's part of your subscription. And if you don't use the $1,000 for the 1,000 impressions per month, it doesn't roll over. It just kind of resets every month. But 1,000 impressions, that's a pretty good chunk. If you are on the single plan, if you only have Photoshop and nothing else, I think it's half of that. It's 500. But just be aware that, you know, don't go willy-nilly and generating all kinds of stuff. Because there is a counter on it. Okay, I'll see if I can get, you know, more information for the next time, so that way you are aware. But I'm just giving you a heads up. You might want to look into it on your own in advance. So anyway, so Q&A. Let's find out. Well, let's find out what you guys are up to, and what kind of problems you're having that may need to be solved, or maybe you just want to share what you're up to. And, you know, I know Brian's been working on his book, or books, and his big project of digitizing a bunch of analog stuff. So
The book is off to the printer.
awesome.
I sent it off on Tuesday or Wednesday. It's out the door.
Nice, nice.
That's the big win right there.
Cool. Looking forward to seeing what it looks like, you know, on hardbound, so, or in bound form, I should say. Awesome.
And you mentioned I've been working with some restoring some photos and that, and it's given rise to a question of flow in Lightroom. And I'm just, if you want to start with a question with that, what I've been doing, if I can improve on it.
Sure.
Here's what's going on. I take these images, negatives, or prints, and I get them scanned. So I know I've got a scanned image. And so what I've been doing so far is bringing them into a folder within my area that I can called scans, surprisingly enough. And so from there, what I've done is, and I guess this is where some of my workflow questions come in. Two things. I was thinking of, I've been starting to make some folders underneath scans because I'm starting to get a lot of them, and I'm looking for organizing by way of, you know, project, if you will. And the other thing I'm wondering on the way to handle is, what I don't want to do is ever touch the original scan.
Oh, right.
That I've done. So I bring these things in, I import them into Lightroom, and one of the things that I'm doing is I either have to ship them off to Photoshop for something, or I'm running them through Topaz to get rid of some noise and sharpen them up, which results in a new file.
Yes.
Which after a couple of iterations becomes really my base file that I will work from. And in effect, I don't need that original scan anymore. So two things. I don't know if I should just, you know, have another place to store it and just, you know, here's offline storage I've already done, or move it down somewhere that the things I've already worked on. I mean, you know, these are pre-scanned. And then the question arises, should I do that, or can I do that within Lightroom, or when I bring these in to scan them, when I bring my scans in, should I put them into these scan/recipient folder, if you will?
Right. Well, okay. So when you're working with scan, all right. So first of all, you're sending it out to get scanned?
Well, there's some of them that are, yes, and then some I'm also scanning on my home scanner.
Okay.
But depending on, but either way, they are being brought into Lightroom, but they're
Right.
files that I have on a disk or something.
Okay. And all right, so if you're scanning them at home, you're probably scanning them as JPEGs, correct?
JPEGs, and I think I can do a TIFF on my thing I was playing around, but yeah, they're typically JPEGs, because
Okay.
if I'm scanning them at home, let's
Yeah.
see what I can do with this.
And then the ones that you're sending out, are you getting JPEGs or TIFFs?
I'm trying to get TIFFs.
Okay. Yeah, there's the all right. So there's a couple of issues when you're dealing with scanning analog stuff. First issue is cataloging. And then the second issue is post-processing. And they both have their own little unique workflows. And how do you juggle the two together? So the cataloging probably is dependent on how you are handling your initial scanning and whether your initial scans have been cataloged prior. So meaning, for example, when I was shooting analog, I would create, I had a photo box that I would keep all my prints and negatives in. And what I would do is I would divide the prints by rolls. All right. So if I get a stack of 4x6s from let's say a 36 roll film, I would put that in, and there'd be a little divider, and it'd have the date, and on like an index card, and I would have a little list of basic description of what all the images were for the shoot, and then I would have the reference number for the negatives. All right, because when you send it out to the lab, they would stick a little sticker on it with typically a 4-digit number so that they can track it. So I would use that number to, catalog my stuff when I had it in my little shoebox. So when you go to scan, usually you scan, one roll at a time. And so that gives you a short window of dates as to, for cataloging it. So that kind of informs a little bit of how you're going to catalog it in Lightroom. If you're going to catalog it by roll, or if you say, I'm just going to, since they're all individual files, I'm just going to parse them out in a different way. And this is going to be obviously dependent on what you prioritize. So, you may say, I have some vacation shots intermixed with some family shots and, some goofing around shots. And I want to kind of segregate everything, and say, okay, all the family shots go here, all the travel shots go there, and the goofing around shots I'll just put in a little miscellaneous file. So the trick is to find a system that works for you, that is easy to remember, and stick with it, So I don't really have any suggestions for you in that respect, because it's a personal thing,
So from a Lightroom perspective, then, if I import everything into a scan folder, can I from within Lightroom make folders down below scans that are organizational?
Yeah. So, okay. So All right.
I'm sorry.
So one of the things that I do when I'm working in the studio, all right, I know this is not kind of scanning analog stuff, but when I'm working in the studio, uh, or actually when I'm working with Lightroom in general, okay, I got images that come in from the studio work. I got images that come in from event work. I have images that come in from workshops, and of course, my own personal images. And what I tend to do is when I bring them into Lightroom, the nice thing is I can automatically segregate them by date. But when I bring them in, I put them into a single folder, which is by year. So everything that comes in gets dumped into my 2023 folder. The only difference there is when I'm shooting in studio, everything gets dumped into my tether because I shoot tethered. Okay. So let's take a look at how I handle the tether, because this kind of sort of reflects what you would do with a scanned image. Okay. So you're taking in scans from different rolls. You know, you got multiple rolls going out with all kinds of different subjects, and they're going to need to be sorted, and they're going to need to be edited in one way, shape, form, or another. Okay. So this is why I said it's like two different tasks kind of bundle into one, the sorting and then the editing. So let's concentrate on the sorting. So everything comes in, and you know, in order to not get overwhelmed, dump it into one spot. All right. Whether you want to call it your scans, whatever you want to call it. All right. Dump them all in there. All right. This way, one, you're not losing track of things that are coming in. All right. They're not being put somewhere where, you know, 2 days from now, a week from now, a month from now, you're like, oh man, where did I put that? And did I sort them? Did I edit them? You know, what did I do to them? Okay. So if you have them all in the dump file, you know this is the folder that you need to be working on. It's your working folder. Okay. And then once all the scans are in and dumped, then you go into the next phase of your workflow, which is sorting. All right. And there's a couple ways you can do it. All right. You can go through the entire folder and sort everything into their individual folders. All right. Give them whatever name makes logical sense to your sort. All right. Whether you're sorting by role, whether you're sorting by subject, or whether you're sorting by dates, whatever it is. Okay. And I would keep them in your scan folder. All right. So you call it scanned. I'm going to call it the working folder. Whatever the title you give it, it doesn't matter. Your working folder. All right. So you sort them out into individual subfolders under your working folder. Okay. And the reason you want to keep them in your working folder is because you are still working on them. All right. You haven't finished whatever it is that you need to do to them. All right. So stage one, you say, okay, I'm going to sort them all. I'm going to parse them out into their individual little compartments so it makes sense. And I suggest you do that because then you can tackle little bits at a time, and you're not going to get too overwhelmed by seeing, you know, 150 files in your dump folder, you know, your working folder. Okay. Then you have to determine what your workflow is going to be for editing. All right. So you mentioned that you're going to be doing some stuff in, Topaz to clean up, remove the dust particles and all the junk that comes with analog stuff. You're going to sharpen them up. You're going to clean them up, all that good stuff. Okay. So what happens is typically the image that you clean up, that's the one you want to maintain and work with. All right, so that's the one that you're going to maybe do a little bit of dodge and burn. If it's color film, you might want to do some color correction, the whole 9 yards. Okay. And then you have to determine, okay, the original file that generated that cleanup file, you have to weigh, is it worth keeping? All right. Because hopefully the generated file is going to be better than the original. All right. And seeing some of the posts that you've put on Facebook, it really, really shows that there's a night and day difference. So you have to make the determination. Are you going to keep the original files? All right. And in that case, all right, this is where I would differ it a little bit than working digitally. So digitally, what I do is I have my working folder, okay, and then I have below it my project folder, okay. And then I say, okay, maybe I have a dozen images in that project folder. And out of the dozen images, I'm only going to edit 3 of them. So what I normally do is I take the remaining 9 images and I put them into a subfolder below that called seconds. Okay, because the images that I want to keep to work on, I want that to be on the highest most folder, so I don't have to keep drilling down through folder after folder after folder in order to get to it. Make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, so my keepers are going to be at the top, and then everything else is going to be below. All right, so now you have your working folder. All the scans go into it. Okay, you parse them out into into the project folder. All right, and the project folder now has to scan. And from the scan, you clean it up in Topaz, which now results in a better file than the original. Okay, so at that point, I would take the original, if you're going to keep it, create a subfolder called original, and move it down 1 level to a subfolder. Okay, that way it's out of sight, out of mind. It doesn't interfere with anything else that you put into that project folder. Okay, because more than likely you're going to start generating additional files. Now, one of the things that happens is when you take your original file and you send it out to Topaz, you do whatever it needs to do, okay? It kicks it back into Lightroom, and then you're going to have 2 versions of it. So within Lightroom is where you're going to move it to the subfolder, okay? So now you have in your project file the Topaz cleanup, all right? And then from there, you're going to be able to work within Lightroom non-destructively on that file. So you don't have to worry about protecting it. Okay? Because Lightroom automatically is going to protect it, just by nature of the way Lightroom operates. So you can do, correcting the crop, correcting angles, exposure, contrast, color, whatever it is that you want to do. You can do it to that Topaz file. Okay. And then from there, you can generate whatever it is that you need, whether you're putting it out for a book, you're sending it out to Facebook, you're emailing it to family and relatives. All right. That's fine. Okay. And normally what I do, regardless of what the project is, whenever I generate an export, I never generate it to the project folder. All right. I know Bill's cringing. I always generate it to a folder elsewhere. Okay. Usually on my desktop, because from the desktop, I can send it wherever it needs to go. And once it's sent, whether it's my website, Facebook, email, whatever it is, I delete it off my desktop because I can always come back to Lightroom and generate a new copy.
I may have mentioned I've adopted that in a big, big, big way the last 3 weeks. I love it.
Yeah. Well, it keeps your library cleaner without a bunch of child derivatives. Okay.
Right.
Because it's very easy. It's very easy to lose track.
Things and those presets and the going out for printing.
Mm-hmm.
That really helps. That's really what I like.
Yeah. You know, well, it keeps things, you know, like I said, clutter free, and you don't have to keep thinking about, all right, which derivative is this? Is this first generation derivative? Is this second generation derivative? Whatever it is, you know, it kind of removes that from the equation. All right. Where it gets a little bit complicated, and this is where you have to be careful with your workflow, is if you have too many third-party programs that modify your file. All right. So if you go to Topaz and then you go to something else, you know, each one of those third-party programs is going to generate a new file. Okay. So for example, if you send your original, all right, your original scan, you send it out to Topaz for cleanup. All right. And it does a fabulous job. All right. So you now take your original scan and you drop it down one level into a subfolder. Okay. So now you have your cleanup file, which now becomes your primary image file. All right. And you say, okay, I'm going to do a bunch of stuff in Lightroom. And I'm like, oh, I need to do something that Lightroom can't do. I now have to send it out to Photoshop. Okay. So maybe you're removing an element, fixing a scratch that the other programs couldn't. Okay. So you send it out to Photoshop. Photoshop is going to create a TIFF file. It gets imported back into Lightroom. So now you're going to have the Topaz and you're going to have the Photoshop file side by side in that folder. Okay. And now you have to make a determination. Do I want to keep both side by side, or do I want to demote one, all right, and keep the other one? All right, you want to keep your best file as your main file, and if possible, remove any children from that working folder or from the project folder, so that you don't get confused as to which one is which. All right. So every time you create a new generation, the older generation should drop down one level. Okay. Now, this is where you need to make a determination: is how do I want to label that degradate? I don't want to say degradate because it's not degraded, but that now secondary file. All right, because you've taken the original,
Deprecated.
Deprecated. Thank you. Deprecated. All right. So we've already deprecated the original, and we've labeled that subfolder as the original. So now you have the Topaz that you've sent out to Photoshop, brought back in. Now that Topaz folder, you're going to deprecate Do you want to put that in with your original scan and, just differentiate by the file name? Or do you want to create another subfolder and call it, whatever, Topaz, you know. So
I've
now,
got a solution for that, what I've done so far,
Mhm.
but the part I was missing was putting the things in the subfolder. But the one thing I've been doing because one of the things, well, like say by the time I've got it done with the Topaz and it's good to go, I'll go in then is just rename the file to what it is. This is Jack and Jill, Topaz, and then a number at the end.
right,
And because no matter where you get them from, a scanning service or my scanner, they come up with just this big long number for the
right.
file name, and so that's one way that I identify it. But it's what you mentioned. A side note, when you're working with old negatives that have been scanned, I've found that Photoshop is way faster with that little healing brush
Oh,
top
yes.
tool.
Yeah.
It's way faster
Yeah.
than Lightroom. So it was interesting how to do my workflow before I set it. I'd send it off to Photoshop, do all that stuff, come back, do the Topaz, and
Yeah.
then sometimes Topaz would expose some more dots.
Yes. So, yes, which is, as soon as you said it, I immediately said, oh, that's going to be a problem.
So I've
um,
amended my workflow that, it's Topaz, Photoshop,
yeah.
yeah, so.
Yeah. So, yeah, what I would do is well, you probably have already encountered it where, do the dust and scratch removal and then bring it into Topaz.
Mhm.
So, yeah. Yeah. But the thing is, you want to find a workflow that is easy to replicate because you're going to be doing a lot of images. Okay. And you don't want to get into a system where you do one thing with one file and you do a completely different thing with another file, and then 6 months, a year later, you go back and you go, what did I do here? Which file is which?
Yeah.
You know, if you keep your best file to the top, all right, which is your project folder, then you know that everything below that is deprecated. Now, once you're finished, once you got the image looking the way you want, remove it from your working folder, which is your scan folder, and place it somewhere else.
Finished. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Because what you want, the thing is, you want to segregate what you're working on from what you're done. All right. If they're all mixed in, you're looking at a bunch of folders with a bunch of names with really no way of knowing what's what. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's the thing. Let me switch over to Lightroom real quick. Desktop. I should probably share my screen, shouldn't I? Share. Okay. So this is, oops. Okay. This right here is my tethered folder. Okay. So when I am doing a job, all right, from my camera, everything gets dumped here. Okay. And then from here, I'll parse it out. And I'm currently working on a company called Unger. All right. Unger Global. Okay. This is the kind of work. Okay. And what I'll do is, as I'm working, all right. Now, let's take just one for example here. Okay. As I'm shooting, I'm shooting multiple shots. Okay. And I'll tweak them a little bit. And then the one that I like here, what I'll do is I'll do this. Okay. The one that I like, I'll immediately flag it. Okay. So I may have this first one here. I may have 3 variations of it. But only one is the one that I'm going to put emphasis on. I'm going to, flag that for sending to the client. Okay. So I'll flag that. Okay. And as I progress, I flag. All right. Once I get all my images, I'll take the whole group and I will export it. Okay. Here's my final export that's going to the client. When I export it, I mark those with the color green. That way lets me know I'm complete. I'm finished with that. Okay? And then I will take it out of the tethered folder and I'll put it into the project folder. All right? And in this case, the project folder is given the name of the product number. Okay? All right. Now, if I right click on the folder, all right, you can see that right here it says, let's see if I can, is it going to let me? Hold on. Okay, yeah, all right. All right, it says add color label to folder. Okay, and you'll see that you have all the standard colors: red, yellow, green, blue, and purple. All right. So this allows me to put a color label on the folder. I've already had a color label on the image. Okay, I'm going to put one on the folder. And what I do is when I upload it to my client reviews the images and they'll tell me, okay, if there's an issue, I will go ahead and mark this with a yellow. All right. That lets me know that, hey, I got this folder requires my attention. Make sense? Okay. But if they approve it, I will go ahead and label it with the green. Okay. And you can see right there, it's got the little green color to it, right? And as they approve each item, I'll go through and I will label it as green. Okay. Now, this is still in my tether folder. Okay. So you can see I have tether. Underneath my tether, I have which is my working folder. I have my project folder, which is Unger Global. Okay. And then within that, I have the individual products. Okay. So everything gets segregated in order to avoid any confusion. Okay. Once they have approved the images, I will take it out of the working folder. All right. And I will put it into, I have down below here, let's see if I can show it to you. All right. I have one here called clients. All right. Clients folder. And under my clients folder, if we scroll down, I have Unger Global. Okay. And you can see all of these projects are now past projects that have been approved. Okay. they are now in their final resting place. All right. From here, I can, throw them into my backup. Okay. That way I keep my working area and my finished area separate, so that as things get approved, as things get finished, they get removed out of my working area. All right. And now I know that everything that's left is what I need to pay attention to. Okay. So you can use a similar process, okay, with your system. All right. So you get the scan. All right. And you can say, okay, I'm going to dump everything into the scan folder. All right. And how many do you normally get in a scan, in a batch, roughly?
Oh, there's a dozen of them.
Okay.
That I'll get. And
All right. So
really what
they're
I look at,
manageable.
probably 100 of these things I'll be working on.
Okay. All right. So they're manageable. All right.
Yeah.
So you get a batch in, and they go into your scan folder. Okay. And then you say, okay, while I'm watching TV, I might, put the laptop on my lap, and I'll sort through. Okay. And I'll go ahead and I will create folders for all of these. All right. Maybe one folder only has one image. Maybe one folder has 6 images. All right. However, you parse them out. Okay. Once they're out of the working folder and into their project folder, all right, because they're still right there in that working folder, you can see now, all right, all of these need my attention. All right. And they're going to be visible right here. All right. So in my case here, it's called tethered, but yours could be, all right, this is your scanned. Okay. And then from the scan, you put them into, these little subfolders. Okay. And each one of these is a group of scans. Okay. Some have 1, some have 3, some have 6, depending on the content. Okay. But because they're all in this folder, all right, these are the ones that you need to work on. Okay. So now you have your oops. Let's go back to my drawing. You have your project folder, and you got all your images. Okay. And then from the project folder, you're going to say, okay, I'm going to create a folder that I'm going to label original. All right. Because you go send it out to Photoshop, you do all your cleanup, it brings it back in. You're going to move your original down one folder. Okay. So you have your project. All right. And then right below it, you're going to put your original. All right. And it's going to segregate it.
So, Doc, if I've come and set this up, and I did that, and 2 weeks later I've imported a bunch of scans and I've worked on them, so I have these originals. Now I've got more originals I want to dump into this existing folder, so I want to add some. So,
okay, so
I guess I miss how that happens.
All right.
Can I click and drag, or is there a?
Yeah, you can click and drag. Okay.
Okay.
So, I don't, let me see, tethered, do I have, all right, here, I'll there's a couple of Hangouts here. Ooh, there's a lot of Hangouts here. Import. Okay. So here's my scans. Okay. All right. And right now we are in this folder, all right? It's called tether, but consider yours, this being scans, okay? And then you have your scans, all right? And you say, okay, these two are part of the same shoot. So they're gonna go into the same folder, okay? So I'm going to select both, and under my main working folder, I'm gonna create folder inside tethered, all right? And I'm going to call it my project folder, whatever name is associated, all right? In this example, I'm just gonna call it project folder, okay? All right. So I now have my project folder, okay? And if you see, my project folder is underneath my working folder, right? You see that?
Yep.
Okay. These are still my scans. All right. So now I take this and I say, you know what? I'm going to do some cleanup. Control E. I'm going to do some cleanup in Photoshop. Okay. And you do whatever cleanup you require. All right. I'm just gonna, all right, go crazy here. And I'm gonna say save. All right. I've now generated a child. Okay. All right. And I'm gonna go ahead and close that. Go back to Lightroom. There is my original scan. All right, this is my original scan. Oops, my original scan, and its child. All right, and as you can see, Photoshop groups it. Okay, but now what I want to do is I want to deprecate that original file, okay, into a subfolder. Okay, so I'm going to right click on the project folder. All right, create folder inside, and I'm going to call it original or originals. All right, because I might want to hold on to my originals for now. Later on, you can do whatever you want. Okay, so now I have my my scan folder, subfolder, my project folder. And I've now, because I've generated a child, I have my originals, all right, which is my original scan is now gone in there, okay? And then now you can say, okay, well, I have this one here that I need to work on, you know, or you might say, you know what, I don't need both. I like the one that I chose to work on. This one is secondary. I don't want it. I'm not going to use it. I'm not going to edit it. I'm just going to go ahead and move that into my originals because it is an original scan. All right. And just click and drag to the originals folder and say, okay. All right. Now you take this one, which is your Photoshop file, and it says, okay, I've done all my cleanup in Photoshop. I now need to send it out to Topaz. All right. I don't have Topaz, so I'm going to send it back out to Photoshop. All right. And, you know, and Topaz does whatever it needs to do to clean it up. Okay. So it's going to create a copy. All right. So this is your Topaz copy. And then when you're done with that, it kicks it back into Lightroom. All right, go back to Lightroom, and there it is. You have your, you have your Photoshop version, and you have your Topaz version. Okay, they're both the same. One's better, the Topaz one, right? So now what do we do with the older version? We need to deprecate that, okay? It's not an original, so we're not going to move it into the original folder, all right? But maybe we can create another one, create a folder called PS cleanup. All right. I'm just making it up because that makes sense to me. You label it whatever you want. Okay. So now it's removed that out of sight, out of mind from my working folder for that project. Okay. So again, we have our dump file, which is our scan file. We have our project folder, and immediately in that project folder should be your latest version of your working files. All right. Anything that gets deprecated should go into a subfolder. All right. And as you can see here, we have our original and we have our Photoshop cleanup. Okay. So now, if at any point you say, oh, you know what? I'm so dumb. You know, I forgot to remove that garbage can while I was in Photoshop. Well, guess what? We can now dump the Topaz file. We can delete that, all right, because we don't need it anymore, all right? And we can go back to our Photoshop cleanup file. We can go, all right, edit original, edit, and I can go ahead and PS cleanup. All right, remove whatever it is. All right, hit save. It's going to kick it back into Lightroom, into the original. It's not going to move it. All right, this is where you have to pay attention to what you're doing. All right, but because we're kind of stepping back to move forward ahead, all right, we're going to go ahead and now send it out to Topaz. Okay. We're going to go ahead and Topaz, right? Hit save. All right. It's going to generate a new copy, but it's going to place it back where? In our deprecated folder. Okay. There's our Topaz cleanup. I just now move that up and promote it to my working folder. Okay. So at any time, you can always step back and recreate any work. All right. Hopefully, you know, you get to the point where you don't have to go, oh man, I forgot. But it gives you that peace of mind that you're always able to step back one if need be. Okay. So let's say you really messed up and you said, oh, you know what? I didn't do my Photoshop cleanup properly. You could always go back to your original folder, pull up that scan, and start the whole process all over again. Make sense? Okay.
Yeah. It does.
All right. So now, all right, if you want, okay, at any point, you can say, all right, I don't want to fry my brain. So I'm not going to work on just one folder at a time. I might bounce around. All right. I may do all my Photoshop cleanup, in one session, and I may get through 6 of them. All right. So 6 out of the 12, you've already done your Photoshop cleanup. All right. So at that point, you can say, okay, well, this folder here, I've done my Photoshop cleanup. I can now give that a color label, let's say yellow. All right. That way I know when I go back and revisit, maybe, I got family engagement, the weekend came up and I'm not going to get to it until next week. I come back to it next week. I still have all these folders, but at a glance, I can say, okay, these folders that have the yellow, I've already done the first step to. So now all I got to do is go to the non-colored ones and take it from there, because those still have to go into Photoshop for the initial cleanup. All right. And then, you say, okay, well, I kind of like this particular image. I've done my Photoshop cleanup. I'm going to go ahead and process it through Topaz. All right. And I'm going to advance that from yellow to blue. All right. So now all your yellows means that you've done Photoshop. All your blues now means you've gone a step further and done the Topaz. All right. Or you can say, you might even do, normally I do it like the stoplight, red, yellow, green. All right. Green being complete. Okay. And then blue, you can reserve for something else. So you can say, okay, my Photoshops are going to be red, my Topazes are going to be yellow, and then when I kick out my export, that's going to be green. Okay, and that export could be, I sent it to family, I created a book, I put it on Facebook, whatever it is. I'm done. The final image is there, and I can kick out any derivatives. All right. And when I see a green, it means I'm done. All my edits are done. I'm happy with the way it looks. All right. Once they're green, then you can move it out of here. All right. And say, I'm going to, let me scroll down a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and move that into my 2023 folder, or whatever folder you want. Okay. And it now puts it out of your tether, or your working folder. All right. So now all that's left is stuff that you need to work on. If it was already finished, it got moved to the new location and you are done. Okay. And that would be a green. All right. Make sense? All right. So you can use color labels to kind of keep track of your process, your progress. And you can create subfolders to keep track of your process. Make sense?
Yeah, didn't know about that coloring up the folder entries there.
Yeah, let me tell you, it's a game changer to be able to do at a glance. Here it is. These are. I'm a little lazy. Some of these have already been done. Some I still need to do. Some I might want to revisit, so I didn't put greens on them. But everything that you see green, I am 100% finished. All right. And I can probably take those and move them to my backup folder. Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and delete this because I don't want to keep these. All right. And I know I'll probably forget later on. Delete. All right. That's the one pain with Lightroom is if you have multiple folders with files, you got to delete them individually. Otherwise, if you just delete the folder, it removes the folder and just keeps the content. So, all right. Anyway, hopefully that answers or gives you a framework to work on.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Awesome.
A couple good ideas, and I've gotten about 70% of what you're doing, but a couple little techniques I needed to hone in on, and I gave me what I needed to do it at the level I want to do it.
Well, play around with it, modify it the way, it works for you. But my preference is to kind of segregate things and only keep the things that I currently need to work on in um, the topmost level. All right. And if I can segregate projects, it just makes it easier.
Well, it's interesting, just a side note, last week, my ex-wife sent me a big box of photos that covered, 1980 to 2000, so.
Oh, sure, more work.
There's not a lot of, but there's a couple cool ones in there, so it's been fun just, throwing them on the scanner and seeing what I can do with them.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, look at Brian had a mullet. So
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, so.
Cool.
That, intermixed with my other little projects, it was,
Yeah.
I gotta do something here about this, it's getting a little out of control.
Okay.
So nice that I can move them out of there nice and easily.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you'll want to move them within Lightroom, otherwise it
Yep.
throws off the catalog.
Yep.
Okay, cool. All right. Bill, thanks for being so patient. I know you had a question for me. So I will let you ask it. I know you asked me via text, so I will let you voice it.
Okay, I have to remember exactly what I asked. Okay, I sent you a couple of pictures
Mm-hmm.
of diffusers I use with my speedlight. One is a bounce, so I can point the speedlight up, straight up, or point it at an arrow so that the light will hit the ceiling and will bounce on the bounce card. And sometimes I use a diffuser and I have the flash going straight, like at somebody's face. I use the bounce card more than anything else. My basic rule is if the ceiling is 10 foot high or less, and if it's white, I use the bounce card. It's also very convenient to carry in the case.
Yes.
And so is the diffuser that I put on in front of the camera. But I also don't want face to be too strong. So it's a little bit of experimentation both, but what got me wondering, well, what's the best way to do? I went to a wedding the other day, yesterday. First of all, the ceiling was higher than 10 feet. And the guy had a bulb. It's like a bulb that they try to sell me at Milford Photo. And I just thought it was, for the amount of times I use speedlight, I thought it was more expensive than I would like, and it's a little bit more cumbersome.
Was it the
handle.
Magmod
This,
by any chance?
yeah, Magmod, yeah. And but this guy had I sent you a picture. This guy had a dome, and it looked like it was built into his. And for most of the pictures, he pointed straight up, not at an angle like I usually do.
All right.
And so therefore you have the bulb. With the bulb, it goes up to the ceiling, and it has lights on the side, so light is hitting the subject, and it's hitting the subject, but it's also hitting 360 degrees in the room.
Right.
And plus, the ceiling was higher than 10 feet, which sort of surprised me. However, when he was far away from the bride and groom, he did use the flash as a straight ahead.
Right. Okay.
Also, you mentioned outdoor, using flash outdoor. I don't know.
Yeah.
Counts in this conversation. How would you use flash outdoors?
Okay. So let's see. Shoot. I just did an event this weekend where I was shooting both indoors and outdoors, but I processed the images at home, so they are on my laptop.
I have that problem when somebody asks something on Facebook and I have a picture I can send, but it's at my home computer. I'm nowhere near home.
Yeah.
I'm on
All right.
vacation.
So let me see if I have. Let me pull up. Oh, I know what. Give me 1 second.
For security reasons, I
Client
don't think my devices.
2023. Okay. There we go. All right. So I have the MagMod system. Okay. And the way
Sorry, I went on mute. Yes.
the way it operates is that you have a little sleeve that goes on your flash head that's got two very powerful magnets. I don't know if you can see it right in there. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I
And
see
then
them.
and then once it's on the head, all right, then all these modifiers just, snap into place with the magnets. Obviously, these stretch, okay? And you can place these, all right? So the MagMod system, yeah, it is a little pricey, but it does a decent job. So you have the dome, you have the scoop, all right, which is kind of like what you would use your card for, or a bounce card. And then you have a filter holder. The filters are behind me, and then a grid, which is, I think it's like I don't know, 20-degree grid, 15-degree grid, something like that. Okay, and they all stack, on each other and magnetize. Okay. I've moved away from the MagMod system because I changed my flash head to the Godox V1, which has the round head. Okay.
Interesting, because his second shooter had that kind of
Yeah.
a flash head.
I
That's
love
part of
I love this light.
is that part of the whole speed light? The top?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
it's
that's okay.
it's just like a typical, instead of being a square head, it's a round head. All right. But
Okay.
it swivels just the same way, the whole 9 yards. Okay. And
So
when
maybe he had his dome on top of that, because I went
he
on
may have,
Amazon last,
okay.
and there's a dome for the Godox system, and I never heard of Godox until I went to Amazon last night.
Yeah, Godac's been around for years. Godox, Flashpoint, they're kind of like the same company, just slightly rebranded. All right, and then when I bought that, I bought this little modifier kit, which has a bunch of different stuff.
That's it. That's the dome I was telling you
Okay,
about.
so yeah, so the nice thing, the reason I switched from the MagMod is the MagMod is very heavy.
Yeah.
These two neodymium magnets are huge and they're very strong. All right. And once you have it on your head, on top of that, you're putting another modifier, and this one here has 4. So you can rotate this, on axes, so there's 4 magnets. So you have 6 magnets plus all this silicon sitting on top of this, which is only attached, by the hot shoe. So you have not only the weight of the flash, but also the weight of the modifier all on this hot shoe. And it just irked me. There was so much weight.
Plus, in my case, I also sometimes use a flash bracket.
I do too. But this goes on a flash bracket. But whether it goes on a flash bracket or on your camera, it's still on this point.
What I was getting at is you were talking about the weight. Yeah, that's, I don't need all of that on top of the flash bracket
Yeah.
for weight.
You know, well, my concern was just doing damage to the hot shoe. That's a lot of weight to be putting on
Okay.
this little hot shoe. This is an archaic design that should have been fixed when they decided to come out with digital cameras. All right, they need to come up with a different system, especially because, well, lights are getting smaller, all right, and more powerful. All right. And the light modifiers are just, they're everywhere. And that's a lot of weight to be putting on to this. But anyway, so the reason I changed to this one, the round head appealed to me, but the Godox has a built-in magnetic ring. So all of these accessories, all right, and this is the one that I use all the time. When I go to do an event, this automatically gets placed on my head, all right? And it's magnetized, okay? So I don't have extra magnets, extra weight. This is a very lightweight little piece of plastic, and it just clips, it just magnetizes right on, okay? And the nice thing about it is that the kit comes with a bunch of other stuff that sometimes I'll use, all right? A grid, okay? It's got a filter holder, just like the MagMod. Okay. It's got a little bounce card holder. All right. So you can take this, all right, and insert a bounce card, all right, which I have here. It comes with a bounce card, and that just clips right in. Okay. And what else? It comes with barn doors if you want to do, you know, some creative, you know, control, and a type of diffused lens, not quite a Fresnel lens, but kind of along the lines. All right. And again, and you can stack these, you know, you can say, okay, I want to put my diffuser, I want to put a gel on there, and I want to grid it. All right. So all that, you know, without adding a lot of weight. Okay. So it's got its benefits. Okay. But regardless of the system, the question is, when do you use what and when, where, the whole 9 yards, right?
Yes.
Okay. So if we think about, let me just put all this, see if we can get it back in the box here. All right. If we think about what is the purpose of a modifier? That's to modify the light that's coming out of your strobe. Okay. So when you have a strobe on your camera, bare flash, okay, normally they have a type of diffusion screen already built into it that's going to kind of spread the light, okay? But the spread isn't very much, all right, and it's very directional, all right? And because it's literally the flash head is right there, that's going to be your strongest amount of light coming out, okay? So we have two considerations when we are dealing with lighting. One is the energy output, how much light is being put out by our light fixture, and how diffused or how much of a spread does that light spread out, okay? With no modifier, it's going to be pretty direct and it's going to be pretty hard. All right, so that's where you get, you know, those hard shadows on your subject. Okay, so if you put this facing directly into your subject, okay, if you are on axis to the, with your camera on axis, it's going to throw the shadow directly behind the subject, okay, but it's going to wash them out. So oftentimes we want to take this, and instead of putting it on axis with the camera, we want to move it off to the side somewhere, right? So that we're not on axis with the subject. All right, so now we're just going to light one side and put the other side in shadow. That's going to give us dimension, correct? You follow?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So by taking the flash from here to here, all right, or even from here to here, making it higher, all right, we are shifting our shadows, all right, in order to give us some form, all right. But because it's still aimed at the subject, it's still going to be very hard light. So the nice thing is when we are in an event, in a room, we have walls and ceilings that we can utilize to help, all right? And because these can angle and rotate, we can aim this head wherever we need, all right? So what ends up happening, here, I'm just going to put it on my camera. I usually keep it on a bracket, but I'm just going to put it on the camera for now. Okay. So now if I'm shooting from here, I'm going to get very flat light. Okay. But this is a very convenient setup. All right. Because the camera is communicating with the flash directly. All right. I don't need a trigger. Okay, I can walk around with this. I don't have to carry a stand and an umbrella and all that good stuff, right? So this is very convenient, all right? So now I say, okay, in order to get better results from our light, we need the light coming in from the side, all right? Typically 45, all right, in order to create dimension, have a light side and a shadow side. So what do? If there's a wall here, we just turn the head towards the wall and we use the wall as our modifier. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So now the light's not coming straight at the subject. It's hitting the wall and now bouncing back. All right. So I take a picture and the light's coming in from the side and it's putting the other side in shadow. Awesome. We've gotten some dimensionality, okay? But we're walking around a room and sometimes we're stepping away from the wall, all right? And it says, okay, well, I no longer have the wall on this side, but I have a wall on this side. I can now turn this way and utilize that wall. Oh, I'm too far away from the wall. What do I have? I have the ceiling, okay? So the ceiling, I can shoot at the ceiling and the ceiling's going to wash the light down, all right? And because it's being modified, all right, it's going to give me a softer shadow, all right? That's all a modifier does, is it takes the shadow edge transition and softens it up, okay? When we put a light in a softbox, when we put a light in an umbrella, it's taking that directional light and making it go this way, okay? And because the light's going everywhere out, okay, it gives us that what we call wraparound light, all right? It really doesn't wrap around, you know, it's just called wraparound because now we're getting an influence of light on the shadow side. So if we have our light here, because it's being sprayed all over the place, we have light influence on the shadow side, all right? And that influence is going to soften the transition of shadow. Okay, make sense?
Okay.
All right.
Yes.
So that's why we want to modify the light as much as possible, okay? So now that kind of solves the issues like aiming at the ceiling, aiming it at the walls, things like that, right? Okay. When we're aiming it at the walls or aiming it at the ceiling, all right, if there's enough energy coming from this, we can use that as our main light. Okay. So
Yes.
meaning that there's enough energy going out, hitting the wall, and then coming back and hitting the subject to light the subject. Okay. And that's if we're using this as our primary. Okay. Alternatively, we can do the same thing, but if the light is, let me see. Let me see if I can get an example here. Give me a second. Okay. All right. Shift. N. All right. Okay. Two images. All right. Both of these images were taken on our rooftop patio outdoors. Okay. And as you can see, one, the flash didn't trigger on me, and the other one, the flash did. Okay. So the one right above my head, the flash did not trigger. Okay. Sometimes I'm a little bit faster than my flash. Okay. But that one over there, all right, that one, the flash was triggered. Okay. And when I walk around, my preferred setup is this with the dome. Okay. In this position, pointed up and slightly forward. Okay. So what happens is it hits that dome and it just spreads light out. All right. If there's anything
Both for indoors and outdoors?
yep, indoors or outdoors. Okay.
Okay.
It'll send light upwards, but it'll also send light forward. Okay. So you can see that in this particular case, all right, the flash did not fire. All right. But I had the settings set for proper exposure outdoors. Okay. So this is what it would look like with natural light. All right. This is a natural light photograph. What I do is I will use flash to kind of fill in the shadows. So now instead of them looking, all shadowy like this, it opens them up. Okay. And now the background light, the ambient light, is not blown out, because in order to get this kind of exposure on my subject, I would have to now overexpose for the scene, okay, which would blow out my background. Follow? All right.
Yes.
So by controlling my background, all right, see how nice and I have this area of white back here. All right, that's not blown out. Okay. We can see white with detail in there. Okay. We also have shadow in here, shadow with detail. Okay. But if we look at the faces, all right, of these people, those faces are not properly exposed. They are actually underexposed. Right? You see that, right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
I see that, yes.
Okay. So now if I wanted to turn this into my client, I would need to do some photoshopping or, Lightroom work, some post-processing in order to brighten up the faces. So I could either crank up the exposure or start putting some local adjustments on them with masks. Okay. But if you have 300 images to deliver and you have to place a mask on each person in order to correct the exposure, it becomes a pain in the ass. You're going to be spending 5 hours editing when you in actuality didn't need to. So by using a flash, I'm getting proper exposure on my subject while controlling my background light.
Are you using something like 1/8 power on the speed light?
To tell you honestly, I throw it in TTL.
Okay.
I TTL it, and I usually go like exposure compensation, like 2 stops down. Okay, depending on how hard the light is. Okay.
Okay.
And depending on how far I am from my subject.
Two
Right.
stops down in regard to the exposure, and 2 stops down
Correct.
and in regard to the flash.
The flash exposure.
Okay,
So
2 stops down.
whatever TTL figures out, I want it to go 2 stops lower.
Okay, so I could do that with the flash exposure.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
thank you.
All right. So now, because normally when I do events, I'm in people's faces here. I can reach out and touch these people. Okay. So I know the light coming off with TTL is going to, wash them out. So I purposely underexpose it. Okay. And that's with just a little bit of light coming forward, because remember, again, I'm shooting most of it up. Okay. So for close-up work, I put it up like this. All right.
Okay.
If I am 10 feet away from a group, which I sometimes am, because I'll put, I usually go with my 24-105. All right. So if I'm 10, 15 feet away, I'll drop this down. All right. Because I want this light to reach further. Okay. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yes.
And then I'll click. Okay. And I usually, when I click, I'll usually chimp, because it'll come up here real quick. And if it's too bright, I just angle it up a little bit. All right. And it just takes off maybe, a third of a stop, half a stop of light. Okay. So I can control my light output just by doing this. All right. Or by turning it and bouncing it off. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Or if there's
Are you also saying I'm wrong in using my bounce card and my?
Nope. We'll get to that in a second. All right. Okay. I'm just saying this is my preferred method. This is what I like. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So, Doc, I have a question.
Yeah.
Because you said it was a patio with a cover on it. If it was just an open thing,
it was open. There were some umbrellas. There was kind of like a
like you would shoot it the same, point the light in the same direction.
Yeah.
Just like that. Okay.
Yeah. Because all right. So you are seeing what the people I photograph see. Can you see my light?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So if you can see my light, means that energy from this is going to reach you. All right. I'm going to point it straight up. Can you still see my light?
No.
Huh?
Well,
I see.
Well,
Can you-
maybe with the dome.
That's my light. That's my light.
Yeah,
You can
okay.
still see it, right?
Yep.
All right.
Mhm.
What's going to give you more energy? This or this?
That.
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 Okay. That's why I say I can control how much energy is reaching my subject just by controlling it like this. Okay. So I can make adjustments on the fly without having to manipulate any of the settings on the flash.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Mhm.
This is a system that works for me. I'm comfortable with this system. It took me a while to get used to this. All right. You have to consciously think about your distances from your subject in order to do this. Okay. All right. Now, even this straight up, light is still going to come forward and hit the subject. Correct?
Yes.
All right. Now, if I take it off, Do you think any of this energy is going to hit you if there's nothing to bounce it?
No.
I don't think so.
Absolutely not. If I take a photo with the light like this, there's not enough energy coming forward. It's going to be as if I didn't even have a flash. Okay? So this diffusion panel, all it does is it diffracts the light and sends it in all kinds of directions. Okay? Now, if I take a bounce card, all right? Here, give me a second. Let me put the bounce card. I haven't used this thing in like forever. Okay.
There we are.
Okay. Can you see the light?
Yes.
Okay. Can you see the light?
Yes.
All right. What's going to hit more, this or this?
That.
Okay. So basically the same principle. All right. The only difference is the majority of the energy is going to go up. All right. Because there's nothing here to spread it. Okay. What
when
does
I use the bounce card?
Yeah.
When I use the bounce card, I usually tilt the
yeah.
not the card, but the snap. What do you call? Yeah. I
Yeah.
usually do that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. All right. Very little energy hits the bounce card. All right. You can see that the majority of the light is just going to go poof, right?
Okay.
All right. So this is useful when you have something you can bounce that light off of. So if you have a ceiling to bounce off, great. If you have a wall to bounce off, great. All right. What is the purpose of this then if the majority of the light is going elsewhere?
I thought because so the light, if it hits the bounce card, it will go in front of the person. No?
No. This is to reflect in the people's eye. This is a catch light.
Oh.
This is a catch
good.
light. Okay.
Good. I want
right.
catch light.
You want catch light. Absolutely. All right.
Mm-hmm.
With this system, what's my catch light? The dome, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yes.
With this, what's my catch light? Nothing.
Right.
So I need something to create a catch light. Okay. The
Mhm.
majority of the
Yes.
energy is being wasted, right? It's being
Mhm.
wasted. Okay. I want that energy hitting my subject. If I do this, it's as if I were doing this. Not the best light. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to take advantage of that wall next to me, bounce it off the wall, all right, in order to get, it hits the wall, comes back on the subject, right? Creates a shadow side, okay? But now, do I have a catch light?
No.
No, absolutely not. Okay, so what do I got to do? I have my catch light.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Notice the
Yes.
orientation.
Yep.
Now I move to the other side of the room. I have to bounce off of that wall. Okay. Guess what? This now has to rotate. That now becomes my catch light.
Okay.
Click, click, click. Okay. So you need to pay attention to where the flash head is oriented and where this is oriented. Okay. If you use the bounce card. Okay. A lot of like the flash, rogue flash bender. Rogue flash bender? Yeah. All right. It normally clamps around the body and it has this thing that you can kind of manipulate because it's got wires. All right. that's a very clumsy, it works beautifully if you just keep your flash straight ahead, all right? And what it does is it creates more of a scoop, all right? So it's actually pushing some light forward, okay? Not all the energy is going forward. A lot of the energy is just, being absorbed, all right? But it's a great catch light and it's a great fill light.
I have a Rogue and I've used it. The only thing is I find it very cumbersome.
It is.
So I don't.
It is very
It- it-
cumbersome.
If I were using a light stand, maybe I would use it, but
Yes. I was just going to say, if you are working with off-camera flash and you want to keep your system very small and compact and being able to travel effectively, the Rogue Flash Bender is great for that because it rolls up, all right, takes up minimal amount of space, but when you unroll it, especially the Flash Bender XL, that's a big modifier, okay? And of course, the old adage, the bigger the modifier, the softer your edge transition is, okay? The softer you can get that light, the more beautiful that light becomes, all right? Okay, so when you're doing events, all right, there are two considerations: your ambient light and your contrast. Okay, your light to shadow contrast. Okay, when you're working with ambient light, if you have very, very bright light, like, noonday sun, you're going to have very hard contrast. And those shadows are going to be very, very deep. Okay. So being able to put a little bit more energy into those shadows will open up those shadows. And you're able to balance it a little bit better. Okay. When you're working with a low contrast situation, so when it becomes later in the evening and the light starts dropping a little bit, then you get into situations like this. Well, this was midday. You can see how harsh the shadows are, but you get into situations where the shadows are a little bit lighter, all right, and you need less energy coming out of your flash in order to fill, all right? Or if you're indoors, okay, indoors typically the house lights aren't strong enough. You need to go up a little bit on your ISO. But the old adage goes, okay, if you're outdoors, bright sun, your ISO should be at 100. As soon as you step indoors in bright sun, as soon as you step indoors, your ISO should go to 400. All right? Doesn't matter if you're using flash because it's the ambient light and how your camera records that ambient light. Okay? So unless you have a space that has a lot of big windows that allows a lot of the outside light to come in, more often than not, you're going into a much darker room. So you're going to automatically up your ISO, 400, 800, okay? And then you're going to apply power just to open up those shadows, okay?
now what about the diffuse? What about the diffuser that I showed you that I used the straight ahead? The straight ahead diffuser.
Oh, okay. So hold on. Let me. All right. I pulled some. All right. So this is the flash bender. Okay. So you can see that the majority of the light, oops. Let me get the majority of the light, moves forward, but it kind of goes all over the place because it's still, a fairly hard light. Okay. There's nothing in front of to diffuse it. What it's relying on is anything that gets bounced from back here, to kind of soften things up and move forward. Okay. What do we got? Oh, these are the mag mods. Okay. This is it's just a globe. It's the same thing. All right. Even with this, you're going to have light going out in all directions, not just forward. Okay. So this is going to give you a little bit of wraparound light. All right. The shadow edge transition is going to be a little softer, but it's kicking enough light to the side where if you are near something that can reflect that light back, it just kind of opens up the shadows a little bit more. Okay. A lot of people really swear by this modifier. It's not much different. It's not much different than my half dome that I have. Okay. It's sending light everywhere. All right. But it's the majority, it's going to be where you're pointing the light at. What do we got? Something like this. That's the Godox system right there. Something like this, where the light is encased. In this particular modifier, this is for close-up work. It's literally a ring flash, but it's a collapsible ring flash. Okay, but if let's say this was on a stand and you have the flash head back here, right, and all of this was right. It's just a softbox. Okay, it's just a softbox. It's just that maybe it's a softbox that's mounted on your camera. All right, and
my other one is a softbox, and if I don't have a ceiling to bounce off of, that's what I use.
Yeah. So all this does is it spreads the light. Okay. Because it's a big white surface directly in front, it becomes your catch light. All right. But you still have light going out fairly directionally. So if we were to look at the light, all right, let's say the flash is here and your camera is below it. Okay, right? The majority of the light's going forward, but we also have light going off to the sides. And that's just going to soften that shadow edge transition. Okay. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right, good question.
Thank you, Doug.
Yeah.
When I saw that yesterday, I saw the mini dome, half dome. It's like, oh, that's interesting.
What was it like this
I'm
one?
talking about the Godox. The Godox.
Oh, the half dome. Yeah.
Yeah, the half dome. It was like, oh, I got class tomorrow night. I will ask that question.
Yeah.
Hey, Doug,
Yes.
but am I mistaken? Do you have a class with Milford photo with light? Just what we were just talking about?
I don't have anything scheduled. No.
No, I must be mistaken. I thought it was you. Or, who knows?
Maybe you're talking about the one that Duck did a couple of months ago.
I am having trouble with time. Yes.
Yeah. No.
You did one though.
I did do one on Flash.
A
Yeah.
couple of years ago. I think that's
No, I did one a few months ago.
Oh,
I did do one a few months ago. So
Yeah, I
That's
went to both
why,
of them. I went to the one that you did
Bill,
a couple
Bill,
months
yeah,
ago. and then
Bill
You
went.
did one just before they closed down the state for COVID. It was like a week before
Hmm.
in Milford.
Yeah, I was. I don't know if it's a badge of honor or what, but I was the last one in that classroom before they closed it down.
I was there.
Yeah.
That was my first, I just started. That was my first, my entry level.
Oh, all right. Yeah. What a time
It
to
is
come in just at the onset of COVID.
just
Yeah.
a
So,
lot of
oh
I,
my God.
I had to go to a wake that morning in Waterbury, and so I took some pictures around in Waterbury, then drove down and took some pictures at the old WADS transmitter site. Some people take pictures of transmitter towers. I'm one of them. And then went down to your class and then went over to, I think, Captain's Cove Marina or one of them for lunch and took more pictures. And then COVID happened and was like, somebody said, what was the last picture? Show us the last picture that you took before COVID. But my friend, his mother's funeral, she was 103 years old. And the
Wow.
thing is, she was probably, if she had died a week later, they would not have been able to have a wake and the fact they
Oh,
had
that's
covered that
true.
much
Yeah,
early.
yeah. 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 Well, let me tell you, COVID just seriously screwed up the world.
and
And
continues.
it
And
continues.
still,
Yeah. Yeah.
Speaking of COVID, I have COVID now.
Oh, great. Nice.
Yeah,
Sure. Don't
my
cough on the screen. We don't want to catch it.
no, my daughter's sister-in-law went to a wedding and they got caught COVID and they caught it let's see Labor Day weekend and then they asked me to babysit for Brady because he had COVID and I tried to do my best not to but
Mhm.
I babysat for him for a week and I got COVID. So
Yeah.
it's not too bad though.
No.
Just a really bad runny nose
Yeah.
and yeah,
Well,
and a little cough.
knock on wood for
Yeah.
you. Knock on wood. Let me tell
Yeah.
you, the 2 years that COVID was full blown, I got lucky.
Yeah.
Last December, here it is. We're in the clear. All right. Last December, 2 days after Christmas, got COVID,
And
and
that happened.
it screwed up my system. I had seasonal asthma, and my asthma has kicked in a lot worse
Yes.
since then. It really screwed up my system.
yeah.
It's nasty.
Yep.
So, but anyway. All right. So as far as Flash goes, Bill, I would suggest experiment, find a system that works for you where you can control it the best. It takes
Thank
a
you.
while. It takes a while to find a working system.
After hearing this and not wanting to spend any more money, and from what you told me, I think what I'm doing now probably works best. If I have walls and ceilings, I use the bounce card.
Mhm.
If I don't, then I use the straight ahead diffuser.
Yep.
But now I'm going to start adding outdoor lighting. And it's interesting that you said some time ago you do outdoor lighting, because when I gave a presentation to the Newtown chemical, what do they call it? They call it flagpole photographers. I gave a presentation. They asked me to give a presentation on photojournalism because one of their guys came to North Haven, so
Right.
I reciprocated. And the guy Shane, who runs the group, said to me, "Do you do your outdoor photos with flash?" And I said, "No." And it got me thinking because he and his wife do an awful lot of outdoor pictures. His wife is Rhonda, And so it got me thinking, maybe I should do that.
Yeah. All right. I found the photos from yesterday's event. All right. Let me share. As a matter of fact, so these are the ones that were delivered, and whoever I delivered them to, they already started renaming some of these with people's names. All right. So this is outdoor shop. As you can see, the sun. The event started at 6 and it went till 10. All right, so I was there from when the sun was low in the horizon to until well into the evening. All right, so this is no flash. Okay, outdoors. I was using a flash, but let's see if it's noticeable. It's probably not noticeable. All right. And that's the trick. You don't want the light coming off of your flash to be noticeable. All right. So in this case, the power on my flash was very, very low. But you can see that none of these people look like they're underexposed. All right. And if you look at the sky behind the people, all right, it's not blown out. Okay. Which would happen if you were shooting natural light and you needed to expose for your subject, your background would get all blown out, right? Makes sense? All right. Really can't see the flash on this one. All right. Okay. Indoor. All right. The outdoor light, I don't care about the outdoor light when I'm indoor. Anything coming in through the windows, if it gets blown out, I'm not too concerned. But even here, you can see that you can still see some detail in the outside areas. Okay, so I'm not fully blown out. All right, but I'm shooting with flash at a very low power, pointing pretty much straight up. So it's just coming off that front edge of my half dome and filling in these shadows. All right. And if I don't know if I can zoom in here. All right. See the catch light? See that white little spot? I don't know if you guys can see it.
I can see the
All right,
catch light,
yeah.
yes.
All
I
right.
can see it.
That's my flash creating that catch light. All right. Actually, it's probably more visible on this guy. All right. That's my flash.
One more question.
Yeah.
What do you do to avoid raccoon eyes when you're shooting with flash?
The light is coming a little bit more directionally forward. It's not coming from above or coming from below. All right.
If it's coming from above, like the ceiling at an angle, it's
Yeah.
going to cause
Typically, if the light is if all right. So part of the control is to open up shadows, and in this case, not necessarily become my principal light. All right. My principal light is the ambient light. I'm just using this to open up the shadows. Okay. So the light that's coming from the flash is just kind of enhancing. All right.
Okay.
If I were to turn, all right, in a studio environment, typically your whatever you're using for flash, that's going to be your key light. That's what you're mainly using to create the true tone value, right? Okay. When I'm using it as a fill light, All right. I'm using a combination of the fill plus the ambient to give me that true tone value. All right. So if the energy from my light was a lot higher, all right, meaning more powerful, in order to not blow out skin tones, I would need to close up my aperture, right? Or lower my, well, normally you would close up your aperture, okay? In order to control the amount of light hitting the skin tone, right? So you don't blow them out,
Yes.
okay?
Yes.
So if you are pumping a lot of energy and you have to reduce that energy mechanically through your lens, you're bringing that exposure, you're going up on the exposure and then immediately bringing it back down. All right. And because when you bring it down mechanically, it's bringing down the light, it's also going to lower the shadows. So any shadows that are there, when you darken for the light, you're going to also darken for the shadow. Make sense?
Yes. So I should probably
All right.
shoot at a f8, right?
I shoot around 5.6 to f8,
Okay.
depending on the situation. Okay. So now if we look at it this way, okay, I bring my power of my light up. In order to create a proper exposure on the skin tone, I need to lower it mechanically through the lens. All right, and it's going to bring my shadow down. All right.
Okay.
So when I deepen the shadows, any recesses is going to get darker. All right, and that's where you get the raccoon eyes. Okay. But if I say, okay, I want to open up my shadows mechanically. All right. So I expose for the shadows. All right. Place it where I want them. And then I only need to go a little bit more to get my proper exposure on the skin. Okay.
Mhm.
I haven't dropped. I've actually raised. I've gone up. Right. So we're here. All right. I say I want softer shadows. All right. And then I want to properly expose for the skin on my flash. Okay.
Mhm.
Rather than saying I'm going to put a lot of flash and then correct for the skin tone.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So as the evening progresses, though, the interior light is going to change. All right. The outside light. Oh, here's one. This guy was in full light, full sunlight. Okay. And actually, look at that. You can see my flash right there in his sunglasses. Okay. So we have full sunlight coming in and hitting him. Okay. And without the flash, this shadow area would have been really, really deep. Really deep, right? Okay. But because I opened it up with the flash, all the shadow has gone up. Okay. And then in post-processing, it kind of balances things out. My highlights get dropped, my shadows open up, and I get this nice exposure. So this is a combination of flash work and post-processing. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Then we get into a little bit more of a complicated lighting situation where, all right, you can see the background. See the background? It's sunset. The sun is literally at the horizon right now. Okay. So this was edited to kind of knock the two sides down. The two sides were a little bit brighter, okay? Because we have a couple of things going on, and this is where having a little bit of know-how in what can be done in post-processing really, really plays, okay? She's wearing a dark dress against a dark background in a dark room. See the problem? Okay. When I threw light on her, what reflected that light the most? Her face and that frickin' sign right behind her. There was no getting around it. That sign directly behind her lit up like a neon sign. All right? Because the light that's hitting her face is the same light that was hitting that banner. And what is that banner? It's a light modifier. What's it modifying? It's it's not modifying her. It's kicking it right back to the lens. Okay? So what I ended up having to do is I had to burn down that banner in post. Otherwise, that banner would have been as bright as her face. Okay? So this is where, understanding what you can and can't do live and saying, you know what, I'm just going to let the cards play out the way it is, and I'll fix it in post. Because things go like this when you're shooting a live event. I don't have the option of positioning myself where that banner is not behind her. It's not like I can walk up to the banner and take it down, first of all. And I have limited space left and right. So even if I move to the left or to the right, I'm not going to get that far off of an angle. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is where you say, okay, well, I need to expose for her and let everything else go to wherever, and then I'll fix the wherever in post. All right. So that wherever became these two side panels. All right. Because I don't know who designed this space, but this wall here, it's metallic. Guess what? It was bouncing light back at me all kinds of ways. Okay. And of course, we have the light coming in from the sun here that's setting in the background. Okay. And my flash was also lighting up all these people. But I needed enough light to hit her, all right, so that way I can make her kind of stand out a little bit, okay? So it took some manipulation in Lightroom to get it to look like this. I had to, burn the bottom, burn the two sides, and then brighten her up just a little bit and really burn down that banner behind her because it just glowed neon. Okay. So, you're going to find difficult situations that there's just no way around it. And you just got to make the best of it. But all right, you can see my flash in this one. My flash is very obvious. Okay. Here's the shadow on that back wall from the microphone. Okay. You can see the shadow on the current of the microphone. Okay, you can see my light. There's my let me zoom in. See that highlight on her cheek?
Mm-hmm.
That's my light. You're looking at my light right there. Okay. But I'm able to separate her because there were some really serious blue lights on that stage. As a matter of fact, here, I'll show you, there was 2 musicians that came up later, and I shot them with no flash. All right, this is them with no flash. That's the light that was on the people on the stage. How horrible is that? It works good for musicians, but let me tell you, not when you're trying to light a person. So, okay.
Were people in the audience taking cell phones with flash
No,
as
actually,
well?
no. I was the only one using flash.
Okay, that's good.
All right. There was another photographer, a young kid. Let's see, you'll see him early. Here he is. You can tell he's not a photographer. He was just, hey, you got a camera. You want to take pictures of people as they come in? All right. I was taking pictures outdoors at night. Let's see if I can find one of those. Let me show you. Oh, here we go. Outdoor flash. All right. See that sky? It's black. The sun had already gone down. Okay. My flash was now the key light. Now the key light. Okay. And I'm still, my flash head was still pretty much pointing upwards. It was just forward just a tiny little bit, but it's mostly pointing upward. Okay. Now, if I wanted to shoot over their head and light this group, okay, I would have pointed that flash forward a little bit more, and that light would have gone a little bit further. Okay. But I would have cropped these people out of that shot because they would have been lit like a neon sign. Okay. But because of the distance, you know, I just rack in with my zoom, rack in with my light, and I can now shoot them from a distance and control my exposure. But because they were literally right in front of me, I pointed the flash almost straight up. Okay. And I was at 1600 for my ISO, and 60th of a second on my shutter, and 5.6 on my aperture. So not quite dragging the shutter, not quite. Okay. Let me show you a similar shot taken by that young man with his camera. All right. There's still light there. He's not in full night. I was shooting full night. All right. See the difference without flash?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Now, had he compensated and you know, for that shadowy forefront, what would have happened to that sky behind? It would have
Would it
just
have
gone to
blown out?
white. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You know, so being able to take a flash into something like this makes a world of difference. World of difference. Okay. So awesome. Any other questions? I think we're pretty much done, I think, right? We're done.
That was very meaty. Thank you, Doc.
Okay. Practice, practice, practice. That's the best you
Thanks,
can do,
Doc.
right? Okay.
That was good. Thanks.
All righty, guys. Nothing next week. And then October, we got Lightroom first, and then we'll get into all the new features of Photoshop on the second week. Okay.
Perfect.
All right, guys. Always
Thanks,
a
Doc.
pleasure. Again, thank you very much for joining me this evening. And In the meantime, if anybody has any questions, you know how to reach me.
Okay,
Thanks,
thanks,
Doug.
Doug.
All right.
Okay,
Have a
bye.
good one.
Take care.
Get better, Carol.
Thanks.
Thank you for watching Learning Photography with Duck. Brought to you in association with Milford Photo, your local full-service camera store. Located in downtown Milford, Connecticut, Milford Photo offers you a personalized shopping experience. From the latest camera gear to printing and framing services. And, of course, educational workshops to teach you the finer aspects of photography. Don't forget to tell them Duck sent you.